Esteemed clients, Portugal Homes is thrilled to be hosting a webinar on the Portugal Golden Visa and the Portuguese real estate market. Our key speaker, CEO and co-founder David Poston, will touch base on key topics related to the Golden Visa, and a Q&A will be addressed at the end of the webinar. Please stay tuned, and we hope you enjoy this webinar. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm sorry we're a little late starting. My name is David Poston. I'm the CEO here at Portugal Homes. And the decision to have this webinar this morning was really just to go over some of the recent changes with the Golden Visa, what's happening with Parliament, and to understand exactly what's possible now in the short time that we have left. I understand we've got a few clients of ours already that are on as well to ask questions just about their processes, and we'll leave that till the end, because the purpose of this immediately is just to go over the government's decision to end the Golden Visa and the processes and the steps that are going to be taking place over the next few weeks. Okay, and again, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. We had a few clients waiting to log on, so that's the reason why we're a little bit delayed. Okay, so the government decided to stop the visa program a few months ago now. They've finally come to an agreement of how it's going to be finished and exactly what's going to be presented before Parliament. And what we've got now is we've got a final bill that will be presented to be voted upon in Parliament on the 19th of May. What that bill entails is many different things. It's not just about the Golden Visa. It's about lots of issues within Portugal regarding social housing, renting, and basically freeing up properties, and it's a whole process. Okay, so the Golden Visa is just a very small part of it. However, it's something that's been part of Portugal now for the last 10 years, and it is sadly coming to an end. What will happen now is on the 19th of May, the bill that's been finalized will be presented before Parliament and it will be voted upon. We're expecting it to be approved. The president didn't like it as it stood originally, and they've adjusted it several times now to get to a point where they feel that there's something acceptable for everybody. So when this gets presented on the 19th of May, what that will mean is that the Golden Visa will cease to exist in Portugal. Now, we expect them to give time. So they could give 30 days, they could give 2 months, 3 months, they could even give till the end of the year like they have done on previous changes to the visa. However, the suggestion by the government is for this bill to take immediate effect once it's registered in the Gazette. So the Gazette in Portugal is where any decisions in Parliament that are voted upon and approved and granted, they get printed in the Gazette, and once they go in the Gazette, they become law. Okay, and the detail exactly how that law change is submitted into Portugal. So the vote will be on the 19th of May. If it is immediate, we expect the Gazette then to print the results of that within 1 to 2 weeks. So that would be your final date in regards to having your application submitted for the Golden Visa. Now, that being said, it could be sooner, it could be longer. My personal opinion is they will give time. They will give time because there's obviously lots of developers, there's lots of lawyers, there's lots of clients that are all in the process of submitting their documents online. What happens is when you purchase a property, what we need to do is we need to get a bank declaration to show that you brought the money into Portugal from an outside source. And that usually takes a few days. And then we need to register the property, which also takes a few days. And both of these documents need to be presented to 𝗟F when we make your application. So technically, for example, if you purchased a property today and you paid your money today, we couldn't really submit your Golden Visa application for around another week. So what we're hoping is that the government understand this, and they maybe give 3 or 4 weeks extra time minimum for clients to continue their process. What we've seen in the past, we've seen many changes to the visas over the last 10 years, some good, some bad. But regardless, every time we've seen a major change, they've always given until the end of the year. And these major changes always happen at the beginning of the year, usually February, March. And they usually always give till the end of the year. So that's still a possibility here. They might still give us till the end of the year. if you are looking to get into the program and you are still in a position where you're trying to get in, my advice is to try and get in by the 19th of May, because that gives you guarantees. Right now, the visa is open. You can submit your application. The program is open to you, to anybody that wants to be involved in it. What you need to have is some legal documents in place, which we can send to anybody that needs them at the end of this meeting. They're also available on our website. And you need to have purchased your property, okay? If you've done that, then we can get your application in and it's fine. The Golden Visa is a 5-year program. Well, actually, no, 6-year program now, but after 5 years, you can get citizenship. I apologize, that's another change. Started as a 5-year program, changed to a 6 a few years ago. But basically, after 5 years, you can apply for citizenship. So how the process works is, once you've been accepted and you've been to Portugal and you've done your biometrics, you will get a visa granted in Portugal for 2 years. It will allow you to travel anywhere you like within the Schengen regions, and it will allow you to live and work in Portugal should you want to. The minimum requirement is that you spend an average of 7 days in Portugal. So you can either do 7 days per year or you can do 14 days in one go. It's entirely up to yourself, but the minimum requirement is those 14 days over 2 years. You need to keep the investment, and you cannot loan any money against the investment. Okay, so if you, regardless of the visa that you do, whether it's a 280, 350, 400, 500, the whole amount of money needs to be invested by you from outside of Portugal, and it needs to stay on that property for the duration of the visa. So we're talking about 6 years. What happens then is after 2 years, you will show that you still own the property, that you've not loaned any money against it in any way, that you've spent at least 14 days in Portugal, and very important, you still have a clean criminal record. Okay. I'm sure everybody on here has a clean criminal record, but just to point it out, it's one of the major points is clean criminal record, you still own the property, and you spent the minimum term required. Whoever goes on your visa all need to spend the minimum term, okay? It doesn't work just on the main applicant. Everybody that's on the visa needs to spend that time in Portugal. And on one visa application, you can have your spouse, so husband or wife, you can have your children, and you can have both sets of parents, okay? Now, children, there's no age limit on what you can have, but from the age of 18 onwards, you need to prove dependency. So your child needs to be dependent upon yourself, so i.e. in full-time education, doing a PhD, master's, anything like this. We've seen children still being approved at the age of 23, 24. It's just, we need to prove dependency. It's one of the things that are involved in it. And it's exactly the same for parents. We need, if they're not at retirement age, we need to prove dependency. And again, it's something that we can have a conversation with you about individually. I'm sure most of you that are at this point now understand all these steps. I'm just sort of refreshing on them a little. The big issue right now in Portugal, the big difficulty right now is bank accounts. Traditionally, we used to get a bank account for a client in around somewhere between 5 and 10 days, absolute maximum, regardless of the country where you're from. One in around about 20 or 30 will go to compliance, and it would add an additional 2 to 3 weeks on, but it was very rare. Ever since the issues between Russia and the Ukraine, there's a lot more due diligence done on money, not just with clients from those countries, but all across the world. And bank accounts now in Portugal are taking probably 2 to 3 months. It's not restrictive on any nationality. There's a lot more compliance that's involved now in terms of whose money it is and where it's come from. And it's not so much that they ask you for a lot more documents. It's more a situation that the bank takes a lot longer to process it. Okay, so if you're at the position now where you want to do the visa, okay, and you want to move forward, but you don't have a bank account and you're not in a position to do that, we can still get you into a property. Okay, there's 2 ways of doing it. One, your lawyers can receive the money through their client account, providing they're happy to do this. Not all lawyers are because of money laundering regulations. Or 2, you can do the money directly through the developer's account. Now, the only thing that needs to happen here is if you do it directly through the developer's account, that bank declaration that we talked about at the beginning needs to be done by the developer. So one thing to make sure is whoever you're purchasing from, they're happy to do that declaration, and they agree to do that declaration immediately after your money arrives in Portugal, because obviously you don't want that delaying your visa application. We've done it for many clients. This situation has been going on now for the last few months, and over the last few months, we've had hundreds of clients that have come through our doors that have done money directly with the developer, and everything's gone fine, and their visa applications have been submitted. So it's not an issue. We just need to make sure that the developer you're working with is happy to do that, or your lawyer, alternatively, is happy to do that. We have lots of lawyers that we work with in Portugal. I think over the last few years, more than 50. We have probably 5 or 6 that we work with on a regular basis, that any of our staff are free to give you their information if you need it. Obviously, you're welcome to introduce any new lawyers to us as well. We'll always work hand in hand with them. The only thing I would say right now is time is of the essence. If you want to get in and you want to be in before the 19th of May, you've got to move really quickly. So you need lawyers that are efficient and are willing to move things quickly for you, and are willing to check contracts. And the reason I mean by contracts is it depends on the visa that you're doing. So what we have is we have 2 sorts of visas here. We have a 350 and we have a 500. A 500 visa is very straightforward. Okay, you purchase a property. It can be any kind of property, as long as right now, because of the changes, it's in the interior regions. Okay, so if you purchase a property that's in an interior region of Portugal, it can be any kind of property. It can be residential, it can be touristic, it can be commercial, anything that you want to. It can be one individual property, or it can be a multitude of properties. From that aspect, it's just a case of negotiating the contract for the purchase, whether it's a promissory contract, which means the property is not quite ready yet, or it's a deed. It's just a case of negotiating that deed. One thing to be aware of is, let's say, for example, you're buying in the interior of Portugal and you're buying a standalone villa. The people that are in there might not be ready to vacate, and you personally need to get this over the line as quick as possible. So what we can do then is we can do a promissory contract. So a promissory contract is a promise to buy. It's the only contract apart from a deed that's recognized by a notary here in Portugal. And what it means is that if the seller pulls out, they have to give you double the money back that you've put down. And if you pull out, you lose your money. So effectively, if you found something for 550,000 as an example, we could do a promissory contract for 500,000. That would allow you to apply for your visa, and it would guarantee you the property pretty much. There's no way a client's ever going to want to give you $1 million to pull out. So it guarantees you it, and it would then allow the seller the time to move out the property and for things to happen in a normal process, which would usually be over a few months rather than in 2 weeks. If you're going for a 350 option, okay, a 350 option is where you have a renovation contract. Okay, now from a 350 perspective, you would be you wouldn't be in interior regions, you would be in different kind of regions, so central Lisbon or Porto, or maybe the Algarve. And what this means is that you invest in a property that needs renovating. It needs to be more than 30 years old, and it cannot have had any work done on the property in the previous 30 years either. Okay, and your total investment needs to come to 350. So you could have 300,000 on the property and 50,000 on the renovation. Now, with the law changes that happened last year, what you can't do is you can't buy residential properties for this anymore. You can still buy commercial and you can buy touristic. What touristic means is it's a project or a development or a hotel complex that's purposely built for tourism. It means it will have one manager. Okay, so one company managing the whole process, and they will be in charge of all rentals. Now, there's some options where clients don't have to rent if they just want to have some personal use, but it technically cannot be lived in. Okay, but if you ever want to rent, it's always through the one management company. A lot of these kind of projects that are certainly in Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve will be hotel complexes. You'll either be buying hotel rooms or an apart hotel where you get an apartment in a hotel complex. And, you know, they work really well because you'll have a big brand usually in running them. You'll get a guaranteed return. And they tick the boxes, basically. They're not usually the best investments, but as long as you're not paying over the odds for what it is. And we can see an exit strategy at the end. They can work really well for people's visa, because since the changes, investing in interior regions of Portugal isn't easy, and it's not a great investment. So, unless you're looking to come and live here personally, it doesn't really work very well for the visa program now from a pure investment perspective. And the reason that I've come onto this is contracts. Okay, when you're doing a 350 with a management contract and a buyback, it's several contracts. So rather than just signing the deed, you would now be signing a promissory contract, a renovation contract, a management contract, and a buyback contract. Okay, so your lawyers now need to go through 4 different contracts. So it's a lot of work. So which is why it's very important you get a law firm that's proactive and that can move quickly. We're at the beginning of May now. This is going to be voted upon on the 19th of May. And if they make it immediate, you'll only have maybe a week to 2 weeks after that before it's presented in the Gazette. So we need to be quick. It's not saying it can't be done, it can. We still have lots of clients right now that are getting themselves over the line, and we wouldn't be doing this webinar now if we didn't think it was possible. We just need to make sure that everybody that's in the process is efficient, from the developer to ourselves to your lawyers. So everything's done in accordance with the law, and it's done as efficient and quickly as possible. In regards to ongoing visas, I know there's been some talk in regards to changing the previous programs. That's not going to happen. The government have come out and said quite clearly that they're not going to do that. I think it made good press when they released the fact that they were going to change certain things, but ultimately, Portugal as a constitution, it follows the law, and it will continue to do so. So anybody that's already in the program will remain under the same conditions. Anybody that goes in the program between now and the 19th of May will be under the conditions that exist now, which means a renewal every 2 years, minimum stay of 14 days. Okay, and then after 5 years, if you want to, you can apply for citizenship. Now, you need to take a basic Portuguese test, level 2. And each individual that's on the application will need to pass that test. And basically, it's really simple and straightforward. The processes of getting approved now are taking around about 14, 15 months. They were longer. They were around about 18, 19. They're down to 14, 15. We expect them to come down. What happened was, during the pandemic, nobody came to Portugal to do renewals. So what you have to understand is there's 10 years of clients in the system here, and every 2 years they have to renew. Plus, there was also still thousands of clients doing their visas remotely during the pandemic, but nobody coming to Portugal to do biometrics. So what the government here did, they put a priority on renewals. So anybody that was in the program, they got priority for biometrics, which meant any new applications now had to wait much longer than expected. Okay, so hence 18 months. Previously, before the pandemic, we were down to around about 6 months, 7 months for approval. We're just over a year still at the moment, but as they're catching up with the backlog, it's slowly coming down. It's getting quicker and quicker, but I expect by middle of this year for it to be under 12 months. And I expect by the end of this year to be back more towards the 6, 7 months that it was previously, especially if they're ending the program in the next couple of months, because obviously it'll ease the burden as well on the CEF departments. So the processes are, once you submit your application, it's an online application. The lawyers will submit it for you. You don't need to be in Portugal. Once that application, has been submitted into the program, traditionally it would have took 30 days to get approval. At the moment, it's taking about 4 months. After 4 months, you will then get an approval from the government of your documents saying that they're all fine, and you'll get invited to Portugal to come and do biometrics. So then your lawyers will get you an appointment in Portugal at a CEF office to do biometrics at a time that's good for you and for the lawyers, that they can get the appointment that works. And after you come to do your appointment at CEF, traditionally, again, it would have took 3 or 4 months for you to get your physical card, whereas now it's taking more like 6, 7, 8 months. So that's the reasons for the delays, is you've got delays in each step, but those are your steps. So online application, come to Portugal to do biometrics, receive your visa card. It'll come to you directly at your country of origin. You'll receive it in the post, and every family member will get one. And then from that point onwards, you are traveling visa-free in the whole of the Schengen region for the next 2 years, and you can live and work in Portugal. The renewal is mandatory. You just need to come here, show you've spent your 14 days. You need to obviously show you still have the property and show that you still have a clean criminal record, and they'll renew for another 2 years. And this goes on for 2 renewals. One thing to bear in mind, if you have children on your application and they're 18 now, you will still need to show dependency at each renewal. Okay, so it's one thing to bear in mind. With the program ending, they've not been 100% clear yet on if your visa will move to a D2 or it will stay as its current status. If it moves to a D2, you will still have preferential status, and you will still have all the conditions that you signed up to now. It's just it will have a different classification on it, but everything else stays exactly the same. The citizenship here is done by title. So to explain that just briefly, if you came to live and work in Portugal, after 5 years, you can apply for citizenship because you have 5 years of title. Okay. What the visa does, or what this program does, is it allows you a year of title for every year that you've invested your money, and you keep it invested. But instead of having to live here, you just need to spend your average of 7 days. So at the end of 5 years, you're just applying for citizenship based on having 5 years of title, and it's the same for everybody else. One thing I noticed in one of the questions, and I'll cover it now, is somebody asked if they can add their partner at a later stage or add additional people at a later stage. You can, but they will only start from that point. So for example, if you apply now, and then in 2 years' time, you added your spouse or a child, their application would only start from then. So when you finish in 5 years' time, they will be 2 years behind you, and they would need to be in the program for 2 more years, or they would need to get two more years of title. It doesn't mean they need to stay in the visa. They could technically come and live here for 2 years, and so on and so forth. But if you add them at a later stage, you can do this, but obviously, you know, they will be missing time in terms of the program. If you wait until after you've got your citizenship, then you can usually add children of a young age without too many problems. You can usually get passports for children of a young age without too many problems. To start adding parents and stuff like this, it's not possible. To add spouses, it's a different format. It can be done, but it's a bit more complicated. So my advice would be, is if you're going to add children, spouses, parents, the beginning is the time to do it, or certainly at the first renewal. Okay, I hope this helps and puts you in a better mindset in terms of where we are. I'm going to sort of open it up now to some questions. I've got some in front of me that have already been sent through. I'll go through them briefly, and then we can open it up to more questions if any of you guys want to ask anything. So the first one we have is from a client named David, so same name as myself. Oh, and that's the first question. If I apply my own initially, will I be able to add my spouse after the GV program ends? Well, if you add after they end, then it's a different format. It's not about adding your spouse now. You're now a Portuguese citizen. You've applied for citizenship. You would then apply for citizenship for your spouse. You would show that you're married, and it's a completely different process then, but yes, it can be done. You have a question here from Gwen as well. The current wait time to get application processed is almost 2 years. Does the 5 years wait time holding property begin when the application is submitted or when the biometrics are done? Okay, so it's from when your biometrics are done. So your visa starts from the moment you get your card. So you do biometrics, then when they send you your card, that's when your visa starts. So like I said earlier, currently around about 14 months from now, but we do expect that to come down. It is coming down rapidly. Like with this here, it says 2 years. It's come down just in the last sort of 7 or 8 months from 2 years down to around 14 months. And it will continue to come down. You have to understand we had 2 years of pandemic and nobody doing biometrics at CEF. And Portugal is a small country. So, you know, to have 10,000-12,000 renewals on top of new applications, on top of all the other functions that 𝗖𝗏 has and all the other immigration departments that 𝗖𝗏 has. It was a lot to cope with. So they prioritized renewals, which meant the initial applications, went back quite substantially, but they are coming down and they are catching it up. This is Portugal. It's a relaxed country, so it's not going to be the quickest in the world, but it's also a stunning place to live, and because of that relaxed attitude. So we have to take that into consideration. But I think by the end of this year, we'll be getting back close to where it was originally. Client Mikey, what are the requirements for the golden visa and how can I apply? Basically, requirements are clean criminal record. You need to show, if you're putting your spouse on, you need to show a marriage certificate. If you're putting your children on, we need to see birth certificates. Because you'll just be doing now, you won't be doing the bank account, so we don't need to worry so much about proof of employment and stuff like this. But main requirements are you need to invest minimum amount of 280 into the country, depending on what you're doing. As I said earlier, there's 504 and 350. The 500 reduces down to 400 if you invest in an area of low density in Portugal. The 350 reduces to 280, again, if you invest in an area of low density. That's a 20% discount on both visas, so from 5 to 4 and from 350 to 280. Low density, we have a map that I'm sure we'll share with you that shows the difference between low density areas and high density. High density are obviously areas like Porto and Lisbon. Low density are more interior regions. One good low density area in Portugal is 𝗣𝗏. The reason for that is it's huge for tourism, so you have some good investments from that aspect. But you'll be looking at 350 investment in Portugal, in Lisbon, and 500, and you'll be looking at 400 and 280 in the low densities. So the requirements are you need to bring that amount of money into the country. It needs to come from yourself. It cannot come from several family members. It needs to be you bringing the money in. It can come from several sources in regards to you can have money in different countries, and you can bring money in from different countries. As long as it's coming from yourself, it's not an issue. We need to show that that money's arrived in Portugal. You need to purchase the property that you've agreed to purchase, and you need to either have a promissory contract signed for the amount that Portugal requires, so either 280, 350, 4 or 5. And you need to obviously have all the documents that I mentioned, sort of marriage certificate, birth certificates, proof of address, etc., ready to go. And that's all that we need then to submit your application. We have one here from Lenora. Could you please go over the reasons the approvals are taking so long? Okay, yes, I think I've already covered that one. Lenora, hopefully you'll be pretty soon, because I know you says here submitted the end of 21. So you're already at that point, so I would imagine you'll be quite soon in regards to getting your approval through. It's just the way things are at the moment. We're still playing catch up from the pandemic, so hopefully you'll be in pretty soon. I'm obviously not the government, so I would love for it to be much quicker, but it's the conditions that we have to work with at the moment.
Lenora also has additional questions to answer. So the approvals were mentioned that it's taking 6 to 12 months. Lenora has been waiting about 1 year and 4 months now, submitted in December 2021 and still waiting for biometrics. Is there anything that she should be worried about?
No, nothing at all. It's just the process. That's why I said we've gone sort of from 2 years to 18 months. The original time was 6 to 12. And I do think we'll get back to that probably the end of this year. I would imagine right now, you should be getting yours through pretty soon. Most clients that I'm talking to that are in the process that you are have received theirs through now, so you should be really soon. We can talk after this in more detail if you want, and we'll find out what lawyers you're with, but it's just a waiting process. There's not a lot your lawyers can do. There's not a lot we can do. It's just a waiting process. Once it's submitted, we just have to wait for 𝗖𝗏 to come back to us.
And the additional question is, does the temporary residence permit allow us to live anywhere in the EU or only in Portugal?
Only in Portugal for the next 5-6 years. Okay, once you have your citizenship, you can live and work anywhere within the EU. You become an EU citizen. Okay, but for now, travel freely within the Schengen, live and work in Portugal. Okay.
The additional question from Constantine is the minimum investment of 350. Then if the property is valued at 270 and another at 80 for the developer, is that okay?
If the property is valued at 270 and then 80 for the works, is that what it means?
For the works for the developer.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, as long as the total is 350. One thing to be careful of is different lawyers have different opinions on this. Okay. Is the works contract is subject to IVA in Portugal, which is VAT. Okay, at 6%. Now, IVA in Portugal is generally 23%, but on construction works it'll be at 6%. Now, what some lawyers say is that the 350 needs to be plus the IVA on the works, and some lawyers say it's included. I've had many discussions for the last few years, and both sets have been submitted and approved. So I would say it works both ways, but if you want to be 100% certain, I would do 80,000 plus the works, plus the IVA, if you want to be covering all bases. But we know a few law firms that do include an IVA, and it goes through perfectly fine as well. But yes, total investment 350.
Now we welcome any clients to bring more Q&As into the webinar.
Questions here to go through as well. So whilst we're waiting for you guys to do that, I can go through a few more. I've got one here. Can the investment come from a UK limited company, which I hold 50%, 1% of the shares? Okay, it can, but you would need a letter from the company, from the shareholders that are there, from every one of them signed, sealed and stamped, to say that you're taking that money from the company. It is your money that you're taking by way of dividend or however it is you're taking it. And if you've got that and we have them documents, then yes, we can submit it and it can be done. Next question, I have one here. Hello, my family and I, 2 adults and 2 children, are planning to invest minimum amount for GV in Portugal. I would like to hear from you on 280 options, which are freehold and prepaid rent. Currently, I've not opened a bank account yet. To place a reserve on notary plans, how can I go about this process? Okay, so the first step is to get you a tax number in Portugal. It's called a fiscal number. It takes us about 48 hours to get. We'll need a copy of your passport and some power of attorney signing. We can do that in our office. It's really easy to do. Your lawyers can also do it for you as well. One thing to be aware of is you need a representative for your tax number to do your tax returns. So whoever gets your tax number is also responsible for doing your tax returns. We have a department that does it in our company. I'm sure most lawyers, if they don't have a department, they have accountants that can do it. Just be careful when you go through law firms for tax advice. It's usually a little bit more expensive, but as long as you understand all the fees at the beginning, it's fine. So first step is fiscal number. It takes us a couple of days. Whilst we're getting your fiscal number, we can be approved in the contracts and everything else. And then next step is to approve the property. Your lawyers approve the contracts and send the money across. Obviously, because of the time constraints now, you would be sending the money either through your lawyer or directly to the developer. Okay. Once this money arrives, we can then get the bank declaration for you, and we can get you. And then after that, you can get the property registration, and we can get your application submitted. So I would say from when the money arrives in Portugal, around about 5 to 7 days maximum, we can submit your visa application. So yeah, it can still be done. We have a lot of people that do it. In regards to sending your options, we'll get one of our team to contact you after this, and they'll send you through some options through for 280, and they'll run through the process with you. Guys, we have a team of people here. We've been in this market for a long time, and we've worked a lot in the golden visa. So the best way to answer questions is always to speak to one of our guys directly. They're very efficient at it, and they probably know a lot more than what I do as well, you know, in regards to the program. Next one, I have an application and would like to find out the status of my application. Obviously, personally, I can't do that. That will be with your lawyers. Again, if you're the client of ours, if you want to contact us after, we can talk to your lawyers and try and see where it's at as well. But if it's submitted, it's just a waiting game now, and just waiting for Immigration of Portugal, which is CEF. to come back to us and approve your application. Guys, and just so as you know, if you submit an application and something's wrong, you get 2 extra submittals, okay? So you don't just, that's it, it's done. You can resubmit documents up to 2 more times, okay? So don't worry if you make a mistake. The lawyers are there to make sure you don't, but even if, we're all human, so even if a mistake happens, you get 2 more attempts before they say, okay, it doesn't work anymore. Do you help with the golden visa application process? So look, we'll help guide you all the way. What's really important here is you should always have an independent lawyer, okay, that's working for you. We're a real estate company and an investment company by trade. And yes, we know the golden visa in and out. We know every step of it because we've done thousands of them, but ultimately you should always have an independent lawyer that we're happy to work hand in hand with. Like I said earlier, we've worked with probably 40, 50 lawyers in Portugal over the years. But you should always have your own independent lawyer to submit your application for you. I think it's more protective for you that way. What's the guarantee for residency after 5 years? Okay, so it's not residency, it's citizenship, okay? Citizenship is guaranteed by title here. So to get citizenship in Portugal, you need 5 years of title. This program guarantees you 5 years of title. Actually guarantees you 6 years now because you're in for a 6-year period. The reason they changed it from 5 to 6 is there was a situation where clients were at the end of the 5-year program that were living, they'd moved to Portugal and were living here and applied for citizenship. And because the citizenship would take about 6 months to process, they were then classed as living here illegally for those 6 months because their visa had run out and their citizenship hadn't gone through. So they extended the program for an extra year to make sure that people still had the freedom. What else we got? How difficult is it to get a bank account in Portugal and how much time does it take and what are the conditions imposed by the banks? So I've gone through this already. It takes a lot longer now due to due diligences with what's going on in the Ukraine and Russia. So I would say it can be as quick as 3 or 4 weeks, but we should be allowing as much as 12 weeks at the moment. So in terms of getting your account, we'll still do that and you still do that process. It just means you might not have it in time for your visa. So we've put the steps in place for you to work directly with the developer or to go through your lawyer. Depends on your lawyers. Some lawyers don't like to do it, like I said earlier, for money laundering reasons. So it just depends on how you do it. One thing to be aware of is when you send your money directly to the developer, some of them still go to compliance, pending further documents. It generally takes us about 3 to 4 days to clear that money. So don't wait till the absolute last minute to send your money, because if it does get held up, pending more documents, it could take us 3 or 4 days to clear it in the developer's account. Okay. And can a golden visa investment be applicable for an Airbnb? Does Portugal offer good rental or Airbnb opportunity? Okay, so there has been phenomenal Airbnb in Porto and Lisbon, so much so that it's caused a huge shortage of property for the long-term rental market. So around 2 years ago, they stopped issuing new Airbnb licenses. They're called 𝗨𝗪𝗔𝗇𝗇 local in Portugal. They stopped issuing new licenses a couple of years ago. What's happening now in this new bill that actually goes to Parliament on the 19th is these licenses, or they're called rental licenses, they are actually part of this bill. And what's going to happen now is rather than it be a government decision, it's going to be a municipal decision. So each municipality will be able to make their own decision on whether or not they're granting new licenses for short-term rental. So the mayor of Lisbon is very proactive towards this, and he wants to bring them back. So it's a good thing for Lisbon. I would say, again, I'm expecting time here. So even after the vote on the 19th of May, I'm expecting time. So these licenses might not come back till maybe the end of the year in Lisbon, but we do fully expect them to come back, considering the responsibility is going to go down to local municipals, and the mayor of Lisbon is very proactive towards bringing them back. From a visa perspective, you can't invest in residential property anymore in the center of Lisbon, only in internal areas. So remember, it has to be in a touristic license. So if it's in a touristically licensed development, then it's already approved to do short-term rental. It's managed by one company, not through Airbnbs. So you would need to be there will be a management company in place. For example, the last product that we just sold out on is a hotel complex in the Algarve of, I think it's 160 rooms in a resort, and that's going to be managed by Hilton. So, and they'll give a guaranteed return. So they're giving a 5% guaranteed return net for, I think it's a 5-year contract. So from the moment it's ready, be on a 5-year contract, and then it can renew after that, or it's a buyback situation where they'll purchase it back. So anything in Lisbon, central Lisbon now, would fall under the touristic license. So it would already be managed by a big company. You wouldn't be doing Airbnb. You can buy in Lisbon a general investment, and once they open back up the rental options, then you can start to do Airbnb then. One thing that's really important to understand is Airbnb licenses, so touristic alojamento local licenses, do not pass from one person to another. So if you purchase a property that has a license, you will not get that license. It will finish with the person once they've sold it, and you need to apply for a new one. So currently, because they're not granting any new ones, you wouldn't get that license. So be very careful of that. Okay, only after the local municipalities make their decisions will you be able to then start getting new licenses. Any more questions?
No. Any clients open for additional questions? Please feel free to insert. If not, we've reached the end of our webinar session on the Portugal Golden Visa.
Okay, but guys, it was a pleasure talking to you all. And like I said, we've got a full team of people here, so feel free to contact any of us whenever you need to. It doesn't matter how small the question is, we'll always help any way that we can. We have another webinar coming on later today as well. So if you think of something in the meantime, my business partner, Gary Harland, he'll be running the one later on this evening. And again, he'll be going over exactly the same as what I just have, and he'll be open himself up for questions as well. So please feel free to contact us at any point, join us later. I think this is also being videoed and live streamed, so you'll be able to download it as well. If I was talking a little bit quick and you didn't understand everything, you'll be able to go back over it as many times as you like. It was a pleasure talking to you all, and have a great day.